Hello there, you beautiful people, and welcome to this section of the Python Bible on functions. Functions allow you to break up your program into little reusable pieces of code and make keeping your code organized much easier. We've been using Python functions all the time throughout this course, and in this section you're going to learn how to make your own. This section is going to show you what functions are and how they work, and we're also going to tie together everything we've learned so far in the course into a really awesome project where you're going to make a game of Tic-Tac-Toe, also known as Noughts and Crosses. Whatever you want to call it, it's this game right here. This project is really going to show off your newfound proficiency as a Python programmer, and by the end of the section you will have actually made a game. Epic, right? So by the end of this section, you're going to be the master of Python functions, so let's jump right in, and I'll see you in the next video. Hello there, you beautiful people, and welcome to your very first lecture on Python functions. This is going to be a complete game changer of a lecture for you, and it's going to really open up a lot of the possibilities for what you can build, and it's really going to deepen your understanding of how Python actually works. So in this lecture, you're going to learn what functions are, how they work, and how to create them for yourself. And by the end of this lecture, you're going to know all about defining functions, returning values, and also how to pass arguments and parameters into functions. If that all sounds like a foreign language to you, then you're in the right place. Let's get into it. So what the heck is a function? Well, a function is a block of organized and reusable code that performs an action or gives some result. Okay, so let's just jump right in and make one that simply adds together two numbers. Functions are made by defining them. Okay, you have to define a function, and to define a function, you use the def keyword, like this. So I just type def. Now let's say we wanted to create a function called add, and it takes two numbers. Whatever they might be, we're just going to call them x and y. So we type def add, and then open some parentheses or some brackets, and type x, comma, y, and close the brackets. Then type a colon. Okay? Now, def tells Python, the def keyword tells Python that we are defining a function. Add is the function name, and whatever is inside these brackets, inside these parentheses, are parameters to the function. They're called parameters. These are basically what pieces of information you need to give the function in order for it to work. So in our case, in order to add two numbers together, we need two numbers, right? X and Y. These parameters can be called whatever you like. I could have called this tuna and apple, right? But that doesn't really make much sense. But you can call parameters whatever you like, as long as you separate them with a comma, so x comma y, like that, and you stick to Python variable naming rules. So they can't start with a number, they can't have spaces in them, just as you would normally name a variable, just name them the same way. So now inside the function, we're going to type some code that we need in order to perform the operation that's going to add two numbers together, right? So if we want to add together x and y, we're just going to type x plus y, right? And that's it. That's our very first function. We use the def keyword to define a function called add, and add takes two parameters, x and y. The function then simply computes x plus y. So if x was 5 and y was 10, the add function would do 5 plus 10, which is 15. So let's see it in action. So now to get our function to run, we need to call the function. Okay, it's called calling a function. So the way that we can make this work is if we did add, just type the function name, and then you type in your parameters. So let's say we want to add together 5 and 10. Okay, now actually you may not have noticed it, but so let me just go back and show you. If I type in add and open the brackets, you can see this little pop-up come up here. That's Python telling us what parameters we might need. So we need two numbers, let's just say 5 and 10. So that's something quite useful. Now when I press enter, now why didn't that work? Well, this was an intentional mistake to highlight something really important when you work with functions. If you want to get something out of a function, the function needs to return a value to you. Okay, sometimes you just want the function to do something. It doesn't need to actually give you back a value or give you back anything. It just needs to do something. Those you don't need to return anything, but we want to get the answer back. Okay, we want to get the answer back, so we need to return whatever this is, whatever this number is here. So the way that we do that is we use the return keyword. We type return x plus y. Okay, now I'm just going to make sure I've got my indentation right. Oops. Let me just get rid of this and start again. Def add x and y, return x plus y. Okay, now when we call the function add 5 and 10, you can see that it returns back to us the number 15, which is fantastic. Now, because this function actually returned a value, we can store that value inside of a variable to use later. So for example, if I had answer equals add 120, now when I press enter, if I show you what answer is, we can see that answer is 120. Now that's awesome, right? We can use functions to do procedures. We didn't have to code this again, okay? We just had to code the function once and it will give us the correct answer every time. Functions, this is why functions are used, to make your code nice and reusable. It's got the idea of write it once, use it over and over and over again, which makes them incredibly powerful. So that's pretty sweet, right? Now there's an incredibly important point that I want to show you, as it's a very common mistake when using functions, especially if you're a beginner, okay? The point is returning values is not the same as printing, okay? I'll say that again. Returning values is not the same as printing. So let me show you what I mean. If I change our function, okay, if I change our function here, and instead of saying return x plus y, I print x plus y, okay? Now, when I run it, let's say if I just add, oops, in capital, let's say if I just add 5 and 2, you see we get back 7. We see 7, right? But if I try to store that value in a variable, like answer equals add 5 and 2, we see 7 comes up, but if I try to look at answer, nothing comes up. If I actually look at the type of answer, we see none, right? It's empty. And the reason is print just showed the value on the screen. It didn't do the required processing to store the result under a variable name in the computer's memory. So watch out for that. Print, in general, just if you're going to assign it something, it always returns none, right? So if I had a equals print hello, right? And I look now at type of a, we're going to see that it's none. Print doesn't return anything. It just shows things on the screen. So watch out for that, as it's a very common mistake for beginners. So I'll mention the point one more time. Returning is not the same as printing. Okay, I think we've got that now. All right, let's make another function. So what if I wanted to use a function that would take in some text and write it backwards? Well, in Python, you can reverse iterable data types with a neat trick using slices. So let's say I had a word, and it contained the string, let's say the word was just pen, okay? Now, to reverse it, all I'd have to do, using slices, is type word, open my square brackets, colon, colon, -1, and we see nep come back, which is pen written backwards. So let's define a function that can use that. And by the way, this trick here is magic, but totally amazing. Now, as a challenge for you, go ahead and create a function called rev, so R-E-V, and let it take in a parameter called text. Then, using the trick that I just showed you, return the reverse text of whatever they put in. So pause the video now and have a go at creating your own function, then come back and see how you did. How'd you get on? Did it go okay? Well, here's how I'd have done it. I'd have typed def rev, and we're going to take in a parameter called text, like I said. So we're going to type in there text. Remember, this can be called whatever we want. This could be called bananas, right? But I'm going to call it text. So what we're going to do, if I just typed text plus plus -1, that's good enough, but we want to get the value out, okay? So we need to return the value, not print it. Now, if I run this, so let me just click that enter. We've now defined that function properly. And if I run this and I type rev and I give it the parameter of pen, we're going to see that we get nep back. Now, this is also going to work with lists, right? Because this trick that I showed you here just works for Python iterables. So I could type in rev of, let's have a list 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's going to give us back 4, 3, 2, 1. So fabulous. We now have a function that can reverse any Python iterable. And the best part is it only took 2 lines of code. Awesome. So if you got that right and you followed through with that challenge right there, you're well on your way to becoming a Python function master, which is a cool thing, I promise. So I think we'll have a break there and just have a quick review of what we've learned so far. So first of all, you learn that functions are pieces of reusable code. They take inputs sometimes, and those are called parameters, and they sometimes return an output for you to store in a variable and use later. Now after that, we jumped right in and actually made a function that adds together two numbers. We learned the difference between returning and printing, and why returning values from functions is important if you want to use the value the function gives you back later. After that, you learned that functions can work on any data type really, and we made a function that can reverse any iterable using this slicing trick, and it will give it back in its new reversed form for us to use in any variable later on. So okay, great. Now that you know how functions work, we define them, give them a name, and give them appropriate parameters and some code, and have a return statement if necessary. We're going to dive a bit deeper into what happens to the values you pass into the functions when they are actually inside the function itself. Now, functions can hide certain pieces of information from the outside world using something called variable scope. Now, this is an incredibly important concept, and it's really instrumental to how you'll work with functions in the future. So up next, you've got a quick coding challenge to check your understanding of functions so far, and after that, we're going to jump right in to discussing variable scope. You're not going to want to miss this, so I'll see you in the next video.